Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. Gonna get started real soon. Just got to figure out how to live stream this to where it needs to be. Yeah, just give me a sec. I'll figure it out. Hmm. While we're waiting for a bit, why don't you enter in the chat where you're from, where you're calling from, or you're joining from, I mean. I see some people already saying what up. Hello. I am calling from or doing the stream from Europe, actually. Usually I do this in San Francisco, but I'm actually in Belgium right now, visiting Ward, if y'all know him. And tomorrow, and I don't know if y'all came to the last workshop, that was the workflows one. Tomorrow, I'm headed over to Tony in Greece because he's getting married, in case anyone wanted to know. Ooh, we got people from Finland. I'm going there soon. Got people from Colombia. Wow. ¿Qué tal? Hi from Munich. Sick. Hey, another Belgium guy. Donkevel. Phoenix, Texas, Washington, D.C., Oakland. Congrats to Tony. Thank you. I guess I'll let him know what you said. Chicago, San Diego. Hell yeah. Ooh, Canada, Central New York, Toronto, India. Man, we're gonna have a great worldwide workshop today. I might have to give up on the live stream because I don't have permission to live stream on Zoom. I don't know if Shane did that on purpose, but maybe he did. Let's see. Um, we'll start in 2 minutes if not. So I apologize for the delay here. I say we get this show on the road. Maybe I can cancel the live stream that was happening and unschedule it or something. I don't know. Whatever. We live stream every day, so if one thing's messed up, what can you do? Let's unschedule it maybe. Well, I say we get the show on the road. Okay, forget about it. Let me just unschedule this so there's no confusion. Just gonna go with it. All right, cool. So yeah, welcome to the workshop. Today we're going to talk about evals. I have some slides, I have some code, we're going to we're going to draw some diagrams and stuff. I want to demystify evals for everyone. I know honestly, it's a very hot topic, but it's funny enough, not a lot of people actually do them. So maybe the people here will learn something and then, they'll start doing it. So I'll share my screen and we shall get to it. All right, let me do this. And here we go. Oops, should start at the beginning. My bad. Okay, so yeah, welcome. If this is your first Mastra workshop, welcome. I'll give a slight introduction. Evals is actually a very advanced topic. So if this is your first workshop, maybe you should stick around, of course. but there's also intro workshops. Like I said earlier, we do live streams every day. They're really fun, and maybe you can come and ask questions, and maybe that's another avenue for y'all to learn. I am solo today because if anyone didn't know, there's the AI.engineer conference in San Francisco, which has been epic. And Sam is over there doing his thing, and then Shane is taking some well-deserved PTO, hanging out with his family. But the show must go on as always, so I'm here to teach everyone. So yeah, we're Mastra. We are a TypeScript. We are the TypeScript framework for building AI agents. Um, and our workshop goal today is build and run evals with Mastra. Pretty simple, I would say. And I'm gonna check on the chat and stuff while it's going because I'm solo, I have to see like maybe what's going on. I already see a question here. Where are the live streams? They're on Twitter and stuff if you follow us. We'll get to that in a second. So yeah, I'm kind of balancing both, but it's all good. So what are we going to learn today? We're going to learn overview of evals and AI applications. I am very opinionated, so you're going to hear some of my opinions, and hopefully you agree with them. We want to talk about off-the-shelf evals, and how you can use them. Are they worth using? We're going to talk about how to use LLM as a judge, which is kind of like a strategy in your evals. We're going to talk about how to write custom evals that are connected to business results, and then you can like build and run these live test suites and stuff like that. Um, and we'll talk about like whether to do this in CI or not. So that's another big question that people ask. Who are we or who are me or who am I? I'm Abi. I'm a founder, one of the founders, and CTO of Mastra. Previously, I worked at a company called Gatsby JS, where I was a principal engineer. We got acquired by Netlify, so I also worked at Netlify, made moves over there as well. Fun fact about me, I've never seen snow fall from the sky. I was born and raised in Southern California, and as Southern Californians do, we go to the mountains where there's fake snow. So I still haven't seen that shit. Um, and I originally wanted 13K stars, but we're actually on our way to 14K. So if you want to connect with me, and you can connect with me at Abi Iyer, and we do the live streams, like I said, and they'll be streamed from both the Monster account, my account, Shane's account. We just do like a simul stream. So there's always a way to interact with us every day. And then we do the workshops as well. So, and you can also reach out on LinkedIn if you want. I'm not a LinkedIner, but a lot of people are. So for sure. And a lot of people came because I was inviting people on LinkedIn. So that's a really cool place to also connect. All right. So the question is, do you need evals? And from Greg Brockman, evals are surprisingly often all you need. I don't know if about that 100%, but you do need some type of eval. And let's like actually walk through this little diagram here. So in engineering and all the software engineering that we do, I think everyone is trying to get to a positive feedback loop or adjust when the feedback loop is negative. And also, I don't. Sorry, just the chat distracted me. I'll have to like periodically do it instead of just get distracted by it. So we are trying to always have a positive reinforcement loop, right? That's at least how we can move forward and feel good about engineering. For example, when we started learning, all of us started learning software development, I'm sure it was hard at some cases when there's a bug or you don't really know where to go because like you don't have a quick loop that can like get you into the right path. Especially when front end stuff in the beginning was really hard, but it had the quickest eval loop because you could refresh the browser and then the CSS changed. And then you felt like, oh, snap, I'm doing something, you know? When you change the color to blue, you can visually see that. In the backend world, unit tests are a good eval loop because you can write code, you can run the test, it fails, you have this negative action that you can then write code and then improve it, right? Like that is the whole loop. With agents, though, and this whole AI stuff in general, because things are not deterministic, you don't necessarily know if you're doing something right or not. Because it may work for you, but it doesn't work for your friend. Or it works on my machine, but doesn't work in prod because the prompts are different or inputs are different, etc. This you can often see this already when you're using Windsurf or Cursor or Copilot or any number of them, or even Lovable versus Bolt.new versus whatever. Like people are having different experiences using the same tools. And that's just an interesting point, right? And so if everybody's having a different experience and you can't really test for 100% certainty, what are you supposed to do? You get into a I mean, technically, if you don't do anything about this, you can release something that will probably just not work, or maybe it works for a bit and the model changes and then you get screwed again, right? So let's walk through this. So you have these LLM invocations and every invocation of the LLM emits traces. If you're using Mastra for sure, can't really speak to, I mean, most frameworks do, right? But if you're doing this solo dolo, you're going to have to figure out how to make sure you have traces in the whole system. Now, traces help you understand what happened in an execution. For an LLM, the same prompt may or may not yield the same execution timeline. That's why tracing is very important. Logging and tracing are logging is more for, I think, for me, right? Like I like to see the things that are happening. Traces can then decorate what's happening with we use open telemetry, but you have this telemetry data. Unit tests are not the same world of unit tests that we may all know. Unit tests kind of test behaviors in this world, but even then, you're not necessarily test, and this is a thing we're going to get back to. You're not testing for success, you're testing for absolute failure, right? If you're, and for example, if you do a unit test, and let's just say theoretically, you say the score should be 70%. And let's say 10 runs, the score is 70%, but one run, the score is 69.5. Technically, that is a failure given our old unit testing world of how we think about things. But in this world, that's not a failure because success is a range of values. So maybe a unit test for success is not the right thing. So essentially, you want to automate these things over time, and you're going to create essentially a way to evaluate your agent and what it does. And then over time, even past that, once you have enough data, aka hundreds of thousands of data points, you might be able to make specialized models called SLMs, small language models, if that's what you need to do, or you can do fine tuning to make this whole thing better. There's just so many things that you can do post having eval data, but most of us aren't there yet because how many people have 100K data points already? And when you're just starting your project, what the fuck are you supposed to do, right? So this is something that is important, but it's hard to see the importance if you don't have like a good loop to do it. So, what is the goal of evals? It's to improve your AI's application's results over time. And over time is the key word here because you're not getting it on day one. But then when should you do it if you're not on day one, right? So there's like this whole question, should I be doing evals? I heard they're not really good until you have enough data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll walk through why you should do them, at least that's my opinion. You should do them and how to get to a quick feedback cycle, and then you can just start iterating. So there's different types of evals. Um, Unit tests, which are you're trying to do this input, output, and verifying responses over a range of scores, or testing for absolute failure in the sense that, I'll get into that more, but like you're just testing for like the danger case. Metrics-based evals, typically we like to call them code evals, which does not take any reasoning from an LLM. It is purely a quantitative measurement or a qualitative measurement, right? You're writing a function given the inputs and outputs, and you are creating the heuristic yourself, and that is totally fine. We've been doing that for many years now, right? Lastly is the interesting one, judges, or some people call these evaluators. These provide feedback and then they actually give you a grade. And given that, you can do a lot of things, right? Now, there are two types of judges. You can have a human judge, which is usually a user or an expert, and we'll talk about why that's important. Or you can have an LLM as the judge, and they are trying to use the reasoning models to evaluate the inputs and outputs of the response. So, pretty cool stuff. Hard to grasp in the beginning, but definitely very much a pillar of this AI application stuff that we do. All right, let's keep going. So unit testing, they end up being very similar to software tests. You could even generate test cases, right? Using like what we call synthetic data, aka just making shit up, really. And you can test different cases. Very much like how we test our unit tests today, we will make like different cases. Sometimes a bug happens in production, and you take that failure case into your test suite, so you know that that one won't happen again. It's a little harder in this world, but it's still the same concept. So that type of stuff, like the principles of that do not change. Your pass rate is super variable because LLMs are non-deterministic. So you have to set the bar on what is okay for your application. Some applications are okay and think passing is 60%, and that's totally fine. Um, that's totally chill. Some are even more stringent. So their evals are way rougher, but their system prompts are a lot more structured, etc. They want a passing rate of 70%, 80%, etc. I just don't know if you can get to 100%, truly. But I guess we'll find out over the next couple months and years. Or maybe AGI will just solve all of our problems. So who knows? You can typically run this in CI, just like any other thing. It is expensive because especially if you're using like an LLM to do things, to generate test cases, it can get expensive. And if you're doing this on every pull request, think about the token use. Like this is different in some ways. It's not necessarily free. You have to pay for compute and the tokens if that's what you're doing. But you can also do this differently where you can essentially, because an agent is full of, for us, workflows, tools, um, networks, memory, etc. You could also take these pieces of the puzzle and unit test them in a traditional software sense because the LLM is going to execute that tool or workflow or whatever, but you can just test those in isolation, much like we used to do all the time. Cool. Keep going here. So here's some examples. So you have a task like get the weather and your sample inputs, right? Your inputs are what is the weather in X city? Can you tell me the weather? Weather in, and sometimes you spell weather wrong, like WHETHER in city. These are all supposed to be different inputs that you could possibly imagine from your user. And your test is, well, I'm expecting the LLM to format the response to contain the city name. Uh-oh, my screen sharing was paused. I don't know why. What happened? Uh, what happened there? Sorry, give me a second here. I don't know why it was paused. You can still see it? Okay, that's great. Sorry, if anyone in the chat, is my screen share paused? Because Zoom just like zoomed out of it. So my bad if it is. I don't know why. Looks fine. Okay, that's weird. The cursor is not moving. Okay, let me stop sharing real quick and share again. Okay, and are we back? If you can just give me a signal in the chat. Do you see my cursor moving? All good. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but cool. Let me get back into this. So I was saying that like the response may need to be, hey, I want the city name in the response, and I want to know that my weather tool was called, right? So I need to know if the LLM executed the weather tool. I want to make sure the tool, the API had a status of 200, and I want to know that it's going to be in Fahrenheit versus Celsius, right? Cool. So that's like an example. Another example, more complicated, is like research a sales lead. Now, types of inputs for this. Where did John Smith work before Apple? If you just typed in Amazon or a company name, like you need to, like these are all realistic things that users do. When did Jane Smith start at Google? That's cool. If you just put like a year, that's interesting, right? Like these are like you cannot imagine. I mean, we all can imagine because we've been software engineers, but we know that users do whatever they want, right? So it's kind of hard to come up with these inputs, which is why synthetic data is interesting. But if you can, then and sometimes you can just take all the inputs that are coming into your production application and then turn them into tests as well, much like we do with errors and stuff. And then the same type of result examples are you want to make sure that if John Smith worked at this place, the answer has factual data or correctness. You want to make sure if you're going to search someone or search a company that, like I just said, that you want to make sure that tool calls are good, they actually get executed when you want to. And sometimes it's really hard to get a LLM to call a tool when you desperately need it. So like these types of tests ahead of time are good. And I'm going to keep going. I also need to speed it up because we've had a lot of technical difficulties, and I'll try to go a little bit faster. So tracing, why is tracing important? Much like in other software applications, traces allow you to see the input and output of everything that's happening. This makes it easier to debug when things go wrong. Also, it's kind of cool to see if you're doing a very complex task, it's pretty cool to see all the things that the LLM does, and it kind of seems like magic, and that's pretty cool. Metrics. So these are the different types of um, like things you can test on. So we support in Mastra, we support a lot of metrics that you can just kind of import and use. They could be quantitative, if you're trying to do some type of scoring on the response. If you have like a structured object, you want to like take the keys and then do some type of function with that, you can totally. It's just code. NLP, natural language processing, which kind of like the predecessor to this, if you want to do tone and like, um, other types of some positive connotations, etc. You can totally do that. But you got to be selective about what you're doing. There is no like silver bullet that if I import this, it's just going to always work. It's really based on what you're doing. But maybe in the category of applications, let's say if you're building a support bot, maybe there are some shared evals there that or metrics, I mean, that are relevant that across those application types. And the most important thing is to monitor. You need to know where you're scoring today, and then as users come, as volume comes, you got to see how the score changes over time. So this is very much like a scientific experiment. Cool. Let's keep going. So there are two types of judges, a human judge and an LLM as a judge. Human judges are expensive because if you usually a human judge is an expert in the field that you're working in. For example, like before Mastra, Shane, Sam, and I were trying to build a CRM, yet none of us have worked in a sales role or ever used Salesforce in our lives. So if we were to continue building an AI CRM, we would have either had to create LLM as judges, but probably in the beginning hire some consultants to make sure that the sales agent is working the way that the sales playbook goes. So it's actually pretty easy though, once you have that person, because they can say something's good or not, and they can like give proper feedback that's relevant and contextual that feeds back into the system prompt, and maybe exposes new tools you need to make, etc. LLM as a judge, it allows an LLM to judge this, which means you have the same non-deterministic characteristic as your agent. So you're going to have to pump that thing up and probably spend as much time as on the judge as your agent itself. But it's cheaper in some ways because you don't have the upfront cost of human labor. And if you can really figure it out, you can get pretty good. But you have to calibrate it, and even judges may require their own judge, right? So this gets kind of meta, but it's important. So let's talk about Mastra real quick. We are open source framework. We help you build AI agents and everything in between or everything around that space. What's included? We have agents, we have tools, memory, tracing, we have workflows that have suspend and resume and all those different types of things. We have eval support as well. We have storage, RAG, a local dev playground, pretty much all the things you need to kind of like make moves in this space. And so now I want to talk about the eval loop and how quickly can you get into the eval loop. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to share my Excalibur, which is not very exciting, but we will draw some stuff. So let me see here. Where is my screen? Here it is. Okay. So first off, this whole eval loop is super important, like we said, because you want to make sure you get better over time. So first, I'm just going to draw a box here that's just the agent. Let me make this extra large. This is an agent, and you deploy this to production, whatever it exists, however you want to deploy it. Maybe you put a UI in front of it, whatever. But what's happening is this agent is going to be getting inputs, which is in the form of these user prompts, right? You input or, user prompts. And within this execution, a lot of things could happen, right? You may have a bunch of tool calls that happen, you know, maybe it's doing like web research and stuff. So these tool calls then are calling some other functions in your application, right? So let's just call these like functions that are executing, and they have a chance of failing or not, of course. You could also call workflows if you're using Mastra, especially. This is very helpful. And these are like deterministic code execution that you can do, but the LLM still has to choose to call it. And some things maybe have already been synced into memory. And so if that's the case, then maybe there's no tool call at all. It's just based on context. And if this is your application, like this, then what's going to happen is you're going to yield a result. So the output is, you know, output could be many things. It could be text, and especially if you're doing some I don't even want to go into the multimodal thing today because that makes things even crazier. But you're not always, the input is not always a text, and the output's not always text. It could be objects, it could be videos, it could be images, it could be voice or sound, right? Everything is possible these days. And the input could also be any number of these things, right? So that's the game we're playing. So now you're in day zero. You just shipped this architecture. You're collecting your inputs and outputs. And maybe on day one, given the volume, things are looking pretty good. You have zero evals at this point because who cares? You're just trying to ship stuff and, iterate. But, and like, and what you're doing at this point, right, when you don't write evals and you're looking at these inputs, well, for many people, you're not even saving the inputs and outputs, so you wouldn't even know how it's performing. Let's say you did. Let's say you use Mastra too, so you're like storing all this stuff. You can then, at this point, you are the first evaluator, right? Because you're looking at the data and you're like, oh man, this sucks. Or it's going well. And if you're the human expert of your own product, that's even better because maybe you can push off evals for a bit and you're the one who can iterate. Usually, this is how development works with evals too, where you can start like kind of thinking about what the evals will be. You can test what you know, like you can test inputs and outputs that maybe you're not an expert on, but you know what they should be. And then you can start doing some human eval stuff. Actually, most people are doing human evals when they test their projects, or if you're in a playground or you're in chat, and anytime you see something it's unexpected, you're doing an eval because you know, like, oh, well, if I ask a weather agent, hey, what's the weather in Brussels, and it's freaking raining, and it says it's sunny, I'm a human eval. Like, it's definitely raining right now. It's not sunny. Boom, I can already do that. But here's the problem. At scale, that's not going to work. So what you want to do, and this is also costs money, by the way. What you want to do is you want to add evals to your agent. And what we call these is live evals. As opposed to running them in CI, why don't you run them? It's almost like, sorry, let me just do this better. But after the output is sent, because you don't want to block on returning results to the user, you do an asynchronous thing where after this is run, you run a set of evals. And maybe in the future, like maybe in day zero, maybe you just run an eval for every input and output you get for the first day, and you are collecting data at this point. But then maybe you want to sample it in the future, just like Honeycomb or all the other tools we use with some sampling rate. And that way, it's happening off the execution path, but you're still collecting live data. Now, all this live data goes into a database. So let me zoom out of here. All these evals get written to the database. So let's say we're using Postgres or something. And if you're using Mastra, this happens automatically. But hey, if you're not, that's cool. You're going to have to put the data somewhere. So this is like your eval results. Okay, so now you have your eval results, and they will contain the input, the output, and whatever score or how you wanted to score this. And then what you're going to have to do is another thing, which is called annotation. So this is the next kind of phase of this. You have a now let's say you have a day's worth of data. You have a bunch of data in here. Now you can run something called annotation. Annotation is essentially you saying, and let me just draw a better kind of look a view of this. Let's say this is like a table of all the data you have, like a spreadsheet, let's say. And some people put their eval data in Google Sheets. So I wouldn't put it past anyone to do that. Um, far have done more. Um, so now you're in this thing and you want to pick good and bad examples. So let's say this first one, I said good, and this next one is bad, right? And when you're annotating, you want to say good, why, right? Good because, bad because. So now what you've done is created another table of things, which are your annotations. So let's say we have another DB table. Let me just put this in the same thing. So this is like our Postgres. Now we have our eval annotations. So now you have, let's say like, the some extra commentary on what happened. Because these do have input, output, and let's say score on each row. The best, the good outcomes will you want the good outcomes and like the really good responses and the really shitty ones. You want to annotate those because what this does is completes the loop, right? From here, you have these things, these annotations that can then be fed back. And sorry, that doesn't look like a cool loop, but it is. Let me put this in arrow. You want to put this back, and maybe you're changing your system instructions. Maybe you're encoding these into your system instructions, or maybe you learned some stuff that needs to tweak these tools and workflows and other things to make things better. So as you can see, it doesn't look like a great loop, but the input comes in, it does its thing, output goes out. Asynchronously, I'm running my evals, I'm storing them, and then I'm annotating them, and then I'm feeding the learnings back into the LLM. Cool. So that's the eval loop, at least as we see it. And there's also other things you could do. And there's definitely products out there that help you run an eval loop, Lang Smith, Lang Fuse, Lang Watch, Lang Trace, Lang everything these days. And Mastra helps you do this too. Okay, let's go back to the slideshow. Almost to the code part, and I'm running out of time, so I really need to speed up here. Oh, we're at the code part. Great. So first, I'll just show we're gonna create some evals. I've already pre-canned it like Emerald Lagasse, right? Like I'm here with the code. I'll just show you different ones, and I'll show you a custom judge, and then we can do some questions. I think that's probably where we're at. So yeah, let's get on with it. So let me actually share my code. Here it is. We'll start with tone. And let me zoom this in a little bit more. And so for each one of these, I've like created an agent and I've created like a test. We'll run the test and I'll kind of walk through everything here. So here it's a very simple agent. Also, maybe look at the chat to see. We have a question here. So are evals added into the agent's prompt? We'll get into that. So be right there. So, excuse me. So I have a simple agent here. You are an assistant that provides information about quantum tech, a quantum computing company. Be detailed and informative in your responses. Technically, this agent doesn't really do much, right? And it's using GPT 4.0. This is all using Mastra. We have these things called off-the-shelf evals, which are either NLP metrics or LLM as judge that you can use. Off the shelf is pretty good to get familiar with evals, and tone consistency, it may be important to some, especially if you're doing customer service or whatever. And so you can set up this tone consistency metric. It's literally calling an NLP function from like Node NLP, which can do that type of sentiment analysis on the response. And that's it. All you got to do next, if you wanted to do this live, you could pass evals in here, and then it would do exactly what I said, that asynchronous loop after that. But in this case, I'm not going to do that because we have a test that we're going to run. So let's go to the test. So this is my tone consistency tests. I have three different test cases, which I want to know, um, like what would the tone would be on those. So first one, what quantum computing services do you offer? Can you explain quantum entanglement in simple terms? And then I'm having some trouble. It keeps crashing. So I don't want to skip this. So for each test, I'm going to generate, like use my agent. I imported it, right, from here. So my tone consistency agent. And I'm going to call it generate. On our agents, we have two methods, generate and stream. I just chose to generate because I'm not streaming anything right now. And I pass these queries in, and they're going to give me a response in text because that's what I'm doing right now. And I can take my metric, which we defined here, and I'm going to call measure, right? Measure is going to give me a score for it. So I'll take the query, what the response is, and I'm going to measure tone consistency on it. So that's what I'm doing. There will be a recording sent after this, if you were wondering. So thanks for the question. It's hard to do these things by yourself. I didn't realize because it's hard to keep track of things. But we press on. So let me get into my terminal here. I will run. Also, if you don't use Warp, you should. It's a great terminal. And they should sponsor me, but they don't. So it's okay. I'm going to run PMPM test or NPM, sorry, NPM run test on source agents, source Mastra agent. 'Cause, 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 Yep, Mastra. Let me just go into that folder actually. And this Zoom thing is pissing me off. I gotta move this. Okay, so CD into Mastra, agents, and we're gonna npm run test on the tone test.ts. So it's running. I don't have any debug logs or anything. We'll just have to wait and see what's going on because it has to generate for each test a response, and then it has to call the tone consistency thing. It logs stuff. I'll go through this in a second. Um, this repo. Oh, the terminal's not showing up. My bad. Or is it? Okay, okay, okay. Let me stop sharing. I don't know why. Can you guys see my terminal now? Let me double check the chat here. Yep. Okay. Sorry. Back in it. And yeah, this repo will be available after as well. So yeah. Sorry about the I'm spazzing, I guess. Okay, let's go through what happened. Also, so I guess you saw the IDE. I just ran npm run test, so you didn't really miss out on much except for me fumbling. But here you can see the query. What quantum computing services do you offer? Quantum Tech offers a range of blah, 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 blah. And then it gives me all this stuff. Honestly, whether that's true or not, we don't, it's not true, obviously, because how does the LLM know what quantum tech is? I just made that shit up. But we're not testing for that. We're testing for tone, right? So this is all the stuff that it said. And then we have a tone info. Response sentiment is 0. It's fine. Reference sentiment 0.04. You really have to know these NLP values for it to make a difference. The tone score is 95%. I don't know how it actually really determined that because these NLP things are a little black boxy. But if you trust it, that's pretty good. And I might be hinting at why I don't really like off-the-shelf evals, but that's just me. The next one, entanglement, same kind of thing. 98%. Wow. The tone was super consistent in this one. Okay, sure. And then the last one is, they're saying some stuff, but the tone is like 79%, because maybe they're too robotic, right? So is this a good metric to use? Maybe if you just want to play around with evals, this is good. I don't think this is actually good personally, but we press on. So that was tone. Let's do another one that is a little bit more interesting, which is answer relevancy. So let's look at that. So I have two different versions of this that we'll go through. So first is I create same type of thing. I'm creating an agent down here. It doesn't do anything yet, but it is an answer relevancy agent. It's using 4.0. I could use a better reasoning model too, and you might have to, and which we are in a different one. But the model's capabilities for reasoning about the inputs and outputs are important. That's why these things get expensive because reasoning models cost more. So just saying. But in this case, you're a helpful customer support agent for Tech Gadget Inc. You should answer questions about our products and services. If you don't know the answer, admit it and offer to escalate to a human. Sure. So we have answer relevancy. This is actually a LLM as a judge metric. I can pass in a model. So I'm using O3 Mini here. And you can give it certain properties. So scale is like I want the score that it outputs to be between 0 and 1. And then uncertainty weight, you can add uncertainty like a little like give, right? So because it is not all this is very random. And let me check the chat here real quick. One quick question on the last one is comparing the tone between the three queries relative to each other. Um, no, it was doing each one individually, just as an iteration, like this one and this one and this one. It's just purely taking the text, passing it through the NLP tone function, and getting a value. So you really have to interpret that. Like it's like that's why it's not a good metric because How do you interpret tone, really, from a text? Or maybe I'm the only one who struggles with that. But anyway, so this answer relevancy is an LLM judge type metric passed in a model, and under the hood, it's going to take the input and output, and it's you're going to give it some context, and then it's going to say, hey, is this answer even relevant? You know? So in this case, there's nothing going on here. It's just using the baked in data. Let's go look at the test real quick. Same thing. I got three different questions here. And um, it's going to say like, hey, is the answer relevant to the question, right? Because what if I said like, hey, when will the tech gadget thing be released? And it tells me that X200 was released. Well, like I asked for X300, bro. So what are you doing, right? So answer relevancy. A lot of people use this metric, by the way, and I think it's pretty good. But you have to tweak that uncertainty weight, and once again, it's kind of like very custom to what you're doing. But this is another good one if you want to like explore what LLM as a judge means and how it works and stuff. So same kind of deal though. We are going to generate and we're going to measure and we're going to print it out. Cool. So let's do that. Let me not skip this because that would be dumb. And let's run the answer relevancy dot test.ts. This one would take a little bit longer. So if you got some questions, we can ask them. It's using O3 Mini, so it should take some time here, but I guess we're one done, two to go. Or maybe no, we still have three to go. So if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. And yeah, we'll have to just sit here idly together while it does its thing. Oh, we have a failure. Great. That's good. I wish I had some knock knock jokes or something, or elevator music or something. Oh, we got second one. Now let's go for the third. Where are we gonna be in the third one? Come on, yo. Speed it up. Oh, and it timed out. I guess it took longer than 30 seconds. I don't really care about that last one because we have enough here to work on. So let's go to the first one. How do I reset my tech gadget X200 to factory settings? The response is it made up some stuff. We're not really testing hallucination here, but just saying that. And the answer, I logged right here, the reason. I probably should have put a space between these, but with LLM as a judge, you get the input, the output, a score. So it judges it as a score of one, which is good because the scale is 0 to 1. So I guess it's 100%. We're killing it. And then it gives the reason, right? So the score is one because every part of the answer directly addresses the user's inquiry by explaining each step, even though it may not be real, right? But there isn't any extraneous information. Okay, cool. Second one, when will the new tech gadget X300 be released? I'm sorry, but I don't have the exact release date for the tech gadget X300. It doesn't. However, I can escalate this is like that thing in the system prompt is if you don't know, then you escalate. The question though, which is funny, is like, how did it know about the X200? If the X200 didn't exist, how did it not know? But maybe it didn't feel comfortable giving me an answer, right? So then the score is 33%. Interesting, or 0.33. It says while the response acknowledges the query, right? So it's kind of somewhat relevant because we acknowledge the query. It fails to provide release information. So the answer is not truly relevant. And then this one, do you offer international shipping? Yes, it does, blah, 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 blah. The score is 0.67 because the first part of the response clearly answers that international shipping is offered, which is directly relevant. However, the additional information about shipping costs and all this other shit is not. So answer relevancy is very strict, right? And some people want their response to be brief. You don't want to be adding paragraphs of unnecessary stuff. Also, if you're in cursor, right, when you ask the cursor agent to do something and then it does 17 other files and stuff, I don't know if that thing is very much answer relevant, right? It's what it did and what you wanted it to do, or there's a gap. And as you can see though, let me go back to the test cases here. I was just looking for everything that was greater than zero, right? So not too big a deal. Cool. There's some questions. Let me go here. I have a question from Colin Matthews. Any opinions on 0 to 1 scoring versus abstract number based on adding for positive behavior, subtracting for negative behavior, or other patterns? I'm going to talk about that in a bit with the custom stuff that I'm actually building too. And then so I'll get to that in a sec. And then Murat, in a case like this where it didn't know about a certain gadget, would it make sense to write an eval which checks if the agent called a certain tool, or would the strategy be to test if the answer mentions the gadget, regardless if it came from a tool or not? Yes, that's what you would want. So if I go back to answer relevancy, let me give it a tool that gives it information. Oops, what am I doing? Let me do this. Do this. I have a tool here called get releases. So it should make something better. And I'm going to change the system prompt to be actually good, or better, And I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put the tools in and we're going to run the test again. But let me also, because I don't want that thing to time out, let's just put like this much. And we're going to run this again. I might not have time for hallucination, but it's all the same kind of business, right? Hallucination tests if like the context and all this is like, actually, I'll go through it real quick and then we'll get into custom and then we might have to go a little bit over given all the stuff. So I apologize for that. This will be recorded though. I'm going to keep going until the content's over, but if you have to leave, that's totally fine. Um, while this is running, I'll start the next one so we can save some time. We'll go to hallucination. Same kind of business, right? I create an agent. It doesn't do much. I create a hallucination metric, which is an LLM as a judge. You pass in a model. I use GPT-4o because I didn't want to wait so long because the last one takes forever. And then for this is interesting. Hallucination is really good. This is one of the off-the-shelf evals that I love because we're always testing for hallucination. And don't we all get pissed when this thing hallucinates on us? I would recommend you at least do this and kind of tweak it. If you all don't know, we have an MCP doc server that you can install into Cursor and Windsurf and then use it to write code. But half the time in the beginning, it just hallucinated on what information was necessary to write that code. So we actually use this hallucination metric and how it really works. You give it a scale, but you want to give it context. And this context is super important for the measurement, right? Given the inputs and outputs and given the context, does it do the right thing? And is what it's responding not like, is it true? Like, is it factually true given what context you gave the measurement? So that's cool. We'll run that in a second. So it looks like they all passed this time. Ain't that interesting? Well, yeah, because I gave it the right information. It could make tool calls. Even though, for example, I didn't add any information about how to do this tech gadget thing, but it knows about the release dates. And in this time, it did better at answer relevancy on the international shipping question. That's why, dude, okay, was it 33%, right? Now it's 0.75. I didn't change anything about that. That's why unit tests like this are whack, because you shouldn't be testing for success. You should be testing for absolute failure. If it could jump like that in that range, right? Obviously, this is a hypothetical situation. I'm putting this problem in a box right now. But dude, like the fact that it could change in a swing like that means you should only be testing for less than X because that means something is gravely gone wrong. Hope that makes sense. And let's run the hallucination test here. So same kind of deal as all the other tests. I have some test cases. I have a lot of test cases here. Let me get rid of some so this goes faster. And then same kind of deal, hallucination measurement. So I'll do that. Okay, while this is running, I'll move to the next one. So we're more efficient here. So I was leading this whole workshop up to this because my opinion is off the shelf is whack. I don't think people should be doing them because in some cases they're good, maybe hallucination, but as we can see, like, does it really like is it truly testing what you want to test? I personally think people should create their own custom metrics that are based on what your business. You're the one writing the application, right? So you're probably the best one to know and to write this metric. How do you do this? The first thing you need is a judge. So I have one here, and my judge is kind of hefty, but you can, so how you do this, and we have docs and stuff on this, but I'm gonna show you now. You can import the Mastra agent judge from the evals package, and you have to write instructions just like an agent. As you can see, I wrote different type of instructions. I don't like LLMs using numbers. Maybe because I studied mathematics in college. I don't know. But I just don't feel right it calculating numbers for me. I do feel right about it giving something a qualitative label, for example. And so in this case, I have different things that I care about. I care about correctness, completeness, clarity, empathy, which is hard to gauge, honestly. And a lot of models don't even pass emotional intelligence, but let's not even go there. Actionability. And within those, I want to grade them on a poor, good, and excellent. And here I have some examples that would have come from annotation, by the way, in a real scenario, or could come from annotation. A poor one is like your warranty is valid for 5 years, but it's actually 2 years. Your device comes with a 2-year warranty. That's like good, I guess. It's factually correct. Your device is covered by a 2-year manufacturer warranty, which includes parts, labor. It gives more information, right? So that's an excellent response. And then the same for all these other ones, right? Like I just have examples, what poor, good, and excellent would mean for each of those categories. And then if we have an evaluate function here, which you can create what we call an eval prompt, right? Based on the customer query and the response from my agent, please evaluate the dimensions only using these ratings, poor, good, excellent. So then I will want a structured object back of the ratings, the examples, and the recommendations. Then I pass these kind of things into my judge agent, right? This is still an agent. It's a LLM as a judge. Agent is like a primitive of Mastra. That's why we called it an agent here. Um, yeah. Then you pass this eval prompt, which has the inputs and outputs in and your kind of structure. And this is going to give you a ratings object in this case. And so this is where, and if you read a lot of white papers too, when they're doing these type of evals, there's a normalization period after you collect this information, where you take the ratings and you convert them into numbers, because now you can put your quantitative uh, opinion on it. So for me, I was like, hey, 2.5 is good, poor, 7.5 is good, and excellent is 10. So then I can actually put some numbers behind it, and I'm the one who made up the numbers, so that's why it matters to me. And then if you want to get a reason, so you have to have the input, the output, and the scores here. You can say, hey, these are all the scores for all the things, and this is my overall score. Please give me like the reason why it was scored this way. And that's how you finally generate a reason. You can format it. And sorry, this is my converting to rating thing. If it's less than 5, it's poor, less than 8, good, etc. So you can convert back and forth between these. I know we have 1 minute left, so I'm going to run this one, but I got to go check on that hallucination one. So all of them failed, or one of them failed, probably because of a timeout. Great. That's okay. So let's just go through one. Here, how has quantum techs evolved since their quantum computer? Quantum tech has made significant strides in the development of blah, 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 blah. Let's look at the reason. Um, where is that? Here. So this scored a one because score is one because all statements in the output are either unsupported, um, and one is not good, I think. One means hallucination, or contradict the context, which is probably true. I just don't have time to go back and show it to you. Let me answer some questions and then I'll run the last one. Um, okay. How did you structure your docs for RAG with MCP? Any specific approach that worked better? Sorry, not really relevant to this, but that's okay. We like structured it by path and then like topic, and you can actually look at the docs MCP server for inspiration if that is good for you. Next one is there a significant difference between using the Mastra agent judge class and a regular Mastra agent as an evaluator? No, it's a convenience. And honestly, this is Evals V1. I'm cooking Evals V2 right here, which will be way cooler than this. Um, but this is what we have right now. So there isn't a big difference, maybe syntactic sugar in a way and TypeScript and shit, but this will get better and more cohesive. Okay, we're gonna do the final drop the mic demo, and I have a agent here. All right, sorry, I showed you the judge. This is my metric. It's like I just made like a customer quality metric that takes the judge and this orchestrates everything. So Rayansh, you would ask like, could you do this yourself? Totally, dude. You could totally do this yourself with a regular agent. We just made these classes for some convenience to give structure to this. But like for example, I created this measure method that exists on the class, calculating a score. So this is convenience stuff to help give like a framework around it. And then I have my customer. This is a test. I'm not going to run these for per se, but I do have an agent in here that I want to run. I think is this one. Agents, customer support. Here it is. So here's my customer support agent. It has some BS system prompt. It has company context because I'm doing hallucination. And it also has my customer quality metric. And in this case, I put them on my agent itself. So when I test it, it's going to do this eval run asynchronously. And so I'm going to run, go back, npm run dev. This will start. Oh, I already have it running. That's my bad. Here, I'll just pretend like you didn't see that. And it's starting up the dev server. We have a dev server. When you run Mastra dev, it turns that Mastra class, for example, here, it turns this into a Hono server, which then we serve a playground from it, which is pretty cool. And if I go to it, you'll see that I have my agent here. And I'm just going to ask it some BS questions and we'll just see how it goes. Like, um, when is quantum tech going to, actually, let me think about this. Why does quantum tech suck? Your agent always hallucinates and leads me astray. Okay, so it's doing its thing, you know. Honestly, if this was a support agent, I would stop reading by now, you know. But for the sake of quantum tech and our customer support metric, we will wait for it. And so this is the response, right? Now in Mastra Playground, you have this evals tab. You're going to see the tone consistency showed up right away because that shit's for free, essentially. You're writing a function. And you can already see that the score was 0.67. Now, remember I talked about that spreadsheet of data? Well, we technically gave you a spreadsheet here in the playground that stores what happened. So you have the timestamp, the instructions. So like this was the system prompt at the time that you ran this, inputs, outputs, and the score. As we know, NLP or these NLP metrics don't have reasoning. Makes sense. There's no LLM involved. Now, in the background now, there's probably some more metrics. Yep, I called it. So let's look at answer relevancy first. And here's another good point about this. If I change my system prompt and I learn things, I still want to see the evolution of my system prompt, right? I have the data for it. Also, what if I regress? I need to know what the system prompt was at a certain time. This is where like a prompt CMS will come in handy. I'm not saying we have one or will have one, but maybe we will. And then you can see the score here. It doesn't really matter about the score because it's all made up, but it's like whose line is it anyway? Hallucination will look very, it's obviously took things that are not in the context. Um, that's fine. But let's actually look at my customer quality metric. So correctness rating, excellent. Quantum Tech is a company focused on developing Yep, that's true. That's true. To improve, completeness. So I can see, right? It's going through each one that I created. I'm the one who cares about this. Okay, so then you can see like why was it a complete answer and the rating was good. So here's some examples from the response. To improve it, the cool thing is I wanted to know how to improve it, even though it might be like wrong. At least it's like a good first step to improve something. And say, like, oh, okay, the response could more directly address the customer specific complaint. I can go back to the system prompt. I can go do some things to tweak this. Clarity, cool, it got excellent. And empathy, good, whatever. But I converted those, I normalized what I wanted in this qualitative label to a quantitative score, 88%. Now, if we didn't know this was all BS, right? 88% is pretty good. And if I had a real agent that I really cared about, and a lot of you do too, you can then feel good about the metric. And that's the whole point because these actionable improving reasons you can then iterate now. And I can go back to my system prompt. I can go change some stuff because look how shitty this one is, right? I can change it. I can make it better. I run the same input again in the playground. Or if I'm in production, I can even do this too. And I'm starting to collect all this data and then go from there. Okay, so that is all I have time for. I'll answer some questions for those who want to stick around, and then we're good. Thank you so much for attending. So, yeah, questions in the chat, please. I'm here. Way harder to do this by yourself. So, thanks for having the patience and, you know, listening to me talk for an hour. Any questions? Thank you. Oh, Craig said thank you. Great stuff. I now have a working eval in my code. Sick, dude. Wow, I did something important today. Yes. Any other questions, or I'll just let everyone go? Going once, going twice, going three times. Okay, well, that was it then. Thank you so much for attending. I will see you next time. I will share, I think in the event, actually, I'll just share it now. Why not? I'll put it in the chat here. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's public, so it's chilling. Evals. There it is. And we'll also send, we send the recording as well. Wait, I need to send that to everyone. Sorry. There you go. So that's the code that we walked through. Oh, we have a question. So if you want to stick around for this, from Colin Matthews, any tips for tracing issues if evals drop and more than one underlying element changed? Oh boy, that's a tough one. Um, If depend so in this case, you need to make sure that the elements that changed have their own tests because you don't want to git bisect this shit, right? You want to just figure out it's got to be these one points. But then if the model changed and now you're receiving, and this has happened to some of our customers, they're like when like the model changed, they changed the model and all their evals go out of whack. Because the first couple days after a model release, things are not so peachy, right? So they needed to know, is it the tools? Is it my code? Is it things that I wrote? Is it the model? So you have to have like tests around everything, which is a big ask right now because, a lot of us are just figuring this thing out. But it's a good tip to start getting into the mindset of what could go wrong in the trace and do I have coverage on all of it? Thanks for the question, Colin. That's a really good question. All right, everyone. I think that will be, unless you have another one, I could be here all day. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go now. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Catch you on live streams. We do it every day. Catch you at the next workshop. Really appreciate it. Bye.